What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review, and this time we're going to be taking a look at Inglourious Basterds, written and directed by Quentin Tarantino. Inglourious Basterds is Tarantino's alternate history on World War II. I'm going to make this review as short as I possibly can. I'm going to tell you the things that I liked, things that I didn't really like, and give you my overall thoughts on how I feel about Inglourious Basterds. So let's waste no time. Let's deep dive right into this. So let's start with the positives because there is a lot of them. Number one, the cast. I love the cast of this movie, particularly Christoph Waltz and Brad Pitt. Christoph Waltz as Hans Landa, the Jew hunter. He is awesome. He is excellent. This was the first movie I ever saw Christoph Waltz in, and because of this movie, I became a fan of the man's work. All throughout every scene that Waltz is in this movie, you were just mesmerized by his performance. How he can go from being very welcoming and very, very polite. He can easily deep dive into just being very, very sinister while still maintaining that, that likable quality to him. It's an outstanding performance. Of course, the standout scene of this movie is that opening scene in the French farmhouse with Monsieur Lapetit, where he's interrogating him about the driver's family. All the while, the driver's family are hidden underneath the floorboards, and of course, Monsieur Lapetit gives them away to Hans Landa, and he orders the execution of said family, with the exception of Shoshana, who ended up, fleeing the scene. And that entire scene is outstanding. Waltz's performance is incredible in that opening scene. The man who's playing Monsieur Lapetit, his performance is great also in that entire scene. It's tightly directed, it's tightly paced, it's very intense, it's edge of your seat, and it's the first half hour of the movie, and you're in like any good Tarantino movie. The first 20 to 30 minutes, if that can't glue you into a Tarantino movie, then you're just never going to get into a movie. Then you're going to not get into it at all. The first 20 to 30 minutes are always crucial to a Tarantino-directed flick, because if those 20 to 30 minutes does not, suck you in, then the entire movie is going to be a slog for a person who's not into Tarantino. It's going to be a slog for that person to get through. But those are my thoughts on that. Of course, the other scenes that Waltz is in, I love him in every single scene he's in this movie. This movie is at its strongest when Waltz is on screen because he has that screen presence to him. There's this excellent scene where he's in a restaurant with Shoshana Drivers, who is now going under a different name, hiding out in France, and they're sharing a piece of cake. And it's a very intense, very suspense-ridden scene because Shoshana fled the scene, and Hans Landa almost, pretty much killed her family. So they're having cake together. She knows it, and the movie and Waltz's performance is so great because he makes you think that he knows he's talking to Shoshana, but he's not letting it on, and it's a fucking fantastic performance. I love it so much. It's so nuanced. Yeah, I can talk about Christoph Waltz in this movie all day. I love him in this movie. He's fantastic. He has great lines. He has, like I said, he has great screen presence. I love the scene where Brad Pitt. I love the scene like near the end of the movie where the character of von Hammerschmack takes three of the bastards to a film premiere, and they had to pose as Italians, and then when Waltz's character comes in, he just starts speaking Italian, throwing everyone off guard. It's hysterical. It's funny stuff. Speaking of that, let's talk about Brad Pitt as Lieutenant Aldo Rain, the Apache. I love Brad Pitt as Aldo Rain. Like Christoph Waltz, he has excellent screen presence. He's one of the most memorable characters in this entire movie. This movie, to me, would not be as memorable if it wasn't for Waltz and Pitt. Those two, they carry this movie. They give the best performances to me. They're excellent all throughout. I love Aldo Rain, the Apache. I love the scenes that Brad Pitt is in. I love that introduction scene where he's just talking to his squad, telling him what's going down. Like, we're here for one thing and one thing only, killing Nazis. And I like how he's like, says, I want my Nazi scalps and stuff like that. Like, Aldo Rain is very, very quotable. It's a memorable performance. And to me, this is one of Brad Pitt's best performances in a film. He's fantastic all throughout. But the supporting cast is just as good as well. Michael Fassbender's in this movie. He plays a character called Archie Hilcox, who was like an undercover British operative. and he gets placed into this thing called Operation Kino, where he has to work with the bastards. And he has a nice scene with Mike Myers and Rod Stewart. And Rod was Mike Myers, who plays a character called Ed Finch, who was like a British officer. Always cool seeing Mike Myers in a movie playing a British man. Why not? Rod Taylor has a little role as Winston Churchill, and they have a nice little scene together, which segues into Michael Fassbender's, side of the story, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And one of my negatives is that this movie, I was liking the character of Archie. I was loving Michael Fassbender's performance, and the entire tavern scene is probably my second favorite scene in the entire movie. It's pretty much all the Michael Fassbender stuff, which I think is another major highlight for me, and I love it a lot. But they kill off Michael Fassbender at the halfway point of the movie, and I would have liked to have seen his character go on more towards the end of the movie, fully into the premiere and everything like that. But they kill him off at the halfway point in a tavern shootout, and that kind of bummed me. It didn't take me out of the movie at all, but it did bum me out because I wanted to see more, because I was liking Fassbender's performance. I was liking the scene. I was liking the dialogue exchanges he was having with Aldo Rain, where Aldo Rain's complaining like, "We're doing fighting in a basement." It stuff's hysterical. It's hilarious. And you got Fassbender and you got Fassbender's character trying to reason everything with Aldo Rain, trying to be like, yeah, this is what they chose, blah 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 blah. And he's just like almost not having it, like, we're in a basement. Funny stuff. I like it a lot. The action scenes in this movie. Oh, I'm sorry. Before I go to that, Eli Roth plays the character called the Bear Jew, and the Bear Jew is brutal, and he is a monster. The Bear Jew's best scene is where he literally clubs a German soldier to death with a baseball bat, and it's something that you would see in like The Untouchables with Robert De Niro. Great fucking scene. Brutal, bloody, good stuff. I also like the character of Hugo Stiglitz, who is a lot of sadistic fun. He's like a Nazi killer, but he's great. He's very vicious, and I love it. Okay, now we'll get on to the production side of things. Like I said, this movie is wonderfully written. The writing is great. The direction is tight. I love the production value of this movie. Quentin Tarantino really captured that World War II aesthetic. It looks authentic, and I love it. From the costumes to the vehicles, to the props, all looks great. I also like the attention to detail, because not all this movie is done in English, and I give him credit for not doing that. Obviously, not every. I think it's like a 60-40 ratio when it comes to the English being the dominant language in this movie, because you do have a lot of scenes. You do have a lot of long-winded scenes where characters are talking in German, they're talking in French, and there is subtitles, but when you're a casual viewer, I guess you're gonna get lost maybe a little bit, because you got to keep up with a lot of stuff. But yeah, it's like a minor nitpick for me. That is, I'm more focused on the story and the characters than I am about paying attention to subtitles and stuff. But you can kind of get the general gist of what everyone's talking about and where the story and what direction the story is going in. So I like that side of the authenticity. Okay, now let's get on to more of my negatives. I already said that Michael Fassbender, I love this movie, but my big negative was him, is that they kill him off a little too early. Another negative I got is pretty much the character of Shoshana and this character called Frederick Zolar. The performances are not bad. They're not bad at all. I think Daniel Brawl does a good performance as Zolar. The actress who plays Shoshana, I thought she did pretty good for herself as well. But there's this subplot where Zolar is chasing Shoshana as a romantic interest, and Shoshana is just brushing him off. And to me, that comes across a lot as filler, and I'm just not really engaged by it at all. It's nothing bad, nothing horrible, but you can take that out of the movie, and I think it would have had a much better flow to it, because those two have a lot of long-winded scenes. Like their scene together, like their first scene together goes on for a while. Then there's this entire section of the movie where they're in a restaurant. Of course, it leads to the best part of that entire restaurant scene was when Landa shows up. But before that, it's just they're talking to Dr. Joseph Goebbels, who's like a director, who's a infamous German propaganda director, and they're talking about this one called Nation's Pride, which is something that Daniel Brawl's character Zolar was in, and it's just very long-winded. It's nothing all that interesting or compelling, but it does give Shoshana the idea to kind of rig the premiere to kill off everyone in one fell swoop, which is what Operation Kino is to get everyone to the premiere and take them all out. But Shoshana is not a part of Operation Kino, so it's like the movie kind of plays it off as like a wild coincidence that she has the same idea as everyone else does. So I guess that stuff is okay. Again, it's okay. It's not my main highlight. It's a negative because I said it's long-winded. It goes on forever, and after a while, you kind of get bored of Shoshana and Zolar together because they just don't do it for me at all. I just don't. Because I'm not into the side plot. I'm more into the stuff with Landa and Brad Pitt and the Bastards and everything else surrounding the movie than I am with Shoshana and Zolar because they just don't do it for me. But we get to Operation Kino, and it turns into a bloodbath. During the nation's pride premiere, Donnie and Omar, who was another part of the Bastards, they just start shooting up the place. They kill Goebbels, they kill Goring, they brutalize Hitler with machine gun fire. Side note, the actor who plays Hitler did a really, really good job, and his standout scene is when he's talking to a German soldier who was spared by the Bastards, and I thought his little performance was great. He has a good intensity. He was actually very funny. I like his over-the-top mannerisms. So that stuff was good as well. And of course, I love the ending. The ending of this movie is great. Now again, all throughout this movie, the Bastards are collecting Nazi scalps, and any Nazi who surrenders to the Bastards, Brad Pitt names them by carving the swastika into their forehead. So we get to the scene where Landa and Aldo Rain, they finally meet one another. And it's a great, and again, this is the scene that I've been waiting for the entire movie, is the meeting between Landa and Brad Pitt and Aldo Rain, and I was not disappointed at all. I loved it. Waltz and Pitt have a really good on-screen chemistry with one another. They're very, very funny with one another. And I like this, and I love the scene where Landa's pretty much making a deal with Pitt, with Aldo Rain, and Aldo Rain, of course, is heavily not into it. And we finally get to when they get to like the American lines, and once Rain gets uncuffed, he shoots the guy that is with Landa, and then they cuff he and this other character, Udovich, they cuff Landa. And now, knowing that they can't kill Landa because he made a deal with the American army, so since they can't kill him, they're going to do something else with him. So Aldo Rain carves the swastika into Landa's head. So pretty much the most despicable character in this entire movie. Even though he survives, he still gets maimed, and it's still satisfying. and it's still satisfying because even though his character does not die, he still gets his in the end by Aldo Rain, and it's fantastic, and it's the only good way you can close this movie. So, yeah, those are my overall thoughts on Inglourious Basterds. Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I like it a lot. I can't say I like it more than Jackie Brown. I think I'd go back to Jackie Brown before I go back to Inglourious Basterds. I mean, I have seen this movie multiple times, and I do thoroughly enjoy it. But it's not my favorite Tarantino movie at all. I don't think it's one of his best movies. It's a well-made, well-directed, very, very entertaining, great performances. It has that Tarantino touch. But, I don't know. It's not really one of those movies that really latched onto, if that's what I'm trying to say. But overall, like I said, it's very entertaining, it's very enjoyable. The cast is fantastic, the writing is strong, the scenes are memorable and great. Aside from things that I didn't really care for, I'm going to give this movie an overall 8 out of 10. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I like it a lot. And that's pretty much it. Well, those are my thoughts on Inglourious Basterds. Let me know yours in the comment sections down below. Do you like it? Do you hate it? I would like to know. Like this video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.